the director will be joining us shortly. Hello, Darin.
Hi.
Thank you for getting up, I guess, really early or staying up really late in Lebanon.
Yes, actually it's 5 a.m. in Lebanon and there's no electricity, so we're managing with LED light and internet.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much for, having to get your own lighting and your own Wi-Fi to be with us tonight. But, it's a pleasure to have you at TPFF. We met last year at TIFF, and I'm so thrilled to see the success of this movie and how it's kind of traveled around the world and spoken to so many different audiences over the past year.
Thank you. Thank you, Dania, right?
Yes, it's Dania. Yeah, you can't see it's Dania.
Yeah, you're too small, I think, on the stage. I want to make sure.
It is me. It is me.
I'm very happy to be with you, Dani, and with the audience. It's always worth it. This is why we make films, to speak to the audience and to discuss the film. So I'm very thrilled to be with you.
Thank you so much. Maybe we start at the very last thing we saw in the film, and that this is a true story. Can you tell me how this story came to you and what spoke to you about this story that you wanted to tell it?
You said that, Dania. It came to me. Like when people ask me, how did you find the story? I always tell them that the story found me. I always say that the story traveled over the years to reach me, and finally I'm lucky to share it with the people because I heard when I was young, when I was a child, I heard this story of a girl, a Syrian girl, a Palestinian girl who survived 1948 and made it to Syria. She was locked up in a room, in a pantry by her father to protect the honor of the family and, of course, to protect her life. But she survived and made it to Syria. And in Syria, she met this young Syrian girl and shared her story with her. And this Syrian girl grew up and got married and had a daughter and shared the story with her daughter. And this daughter happened to be me. So since that time, when she shared it with me when I was a child, I kept thinking of this girl and what happened to her in this room, especially that I'm very claustrophobic. I used to be very claustrophobic when I was a child, and this made me feel with her and think of her and what she felt in this room. So when I grew up and became a filmmaker, I decided that this should be my debut feature.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and I felt kind of responsibility towards this girl who I never met.
Yeah, it sounds like she stayed with you your whole entire life, was a part of you.
Yeah.
When you speak about the responsibility, I want to talk a little, talk about the young actress who depicted this character in such an incredible light. Can you tell us about how, you found her or she found you, and what was that did you feel a responsibility in that same way to her in making such a film that is very traumatic?
Yes, finding Farha was a journey by itself as well. And I always told my producers, finding the right girl will be very difficult and it will take time. It took me around a year and a half. I auditioned many girls, and I knew that I'm not gonna find an actress in this age, 15 or 14. Especially in Jordan, we don't have actors in this age. So I had to look for a non-actress, someone who I can see something in her, like in her eyes, because most of the film will the camera will be on her. I need a face that people will engage with and will like and will have empathy and will feel with. And I always say the first audition of Karam, who played Farha, wasn't good. She was very shy, and I didn't see potential in acting at all, to be honest. But what I saw in her, and we laugh about it now, like Karam and I, when we talk about it, because it's not the audition that really made me want to choose her for Farha, but her eyes were very expressive. Her face was very like. Her face took me back in time because it's a period piece, and her face was different than the other girls that I saw. And like when I took a picture of her from this side, she looked like a child, and from this side she felt like she's a young woman, and it's a coming of age film. And I felt this could really help me in shooting the film. So I took many shots from here, and when throughout the film I tried to change the angles, to play with this, to use this in a good way. So we worked, after that we worked together. I worked with her for like 4 or 5 months, with her and the other girl who played Farida, Tala Gammo. I gave them a workshop for around 4 to 5 months, but also for them to have this kind of chemistry and connection and to be friends. And after few months, I told them, you're selected. I didn't tell them immediately because I wanted them to feel the responsibility as well. To know also how tiring and how big it is to play in a film. It's not like a school thing or project, you know. And they needed, I needed to make them feel this responsibility throughout the workshop. Talking about the responsibility and how I felt towards Karam, since it's a heavy film, it was some directors kind of abuse actors, especially, I mean it, like some directors don't care about the actor and care only about the film, which I think is very bad because we're humans, and this is the most important thing. And I'm going to share a story with you about Karam. I remember the 4th day of shooting. It was a long day, and she was kind of shocked, although I prepared her a lot, but it's always different when you're on set and you have many people around you, and it's long hours. Of course, it's shorter with a child, but still for her, it's something very serious and very kind of stressful. So I remember and repeating the shot and like the many takes. Sometimes, sometimes they feel they're not good enough, but it's not that. Sometimes the lighting is changed, so it wasn't easy. But I remember this day when we were going home, I told her to come with me in the same car, and I wanted to talk to her, and the thing she did was she put her head on my knee and slept in the car, and she was exhausted, and I remember she cried. She was really tired, and I talked to my producers, and I said, I think we need 2 days off, because I made her stop everything, like PlayStation, like sports and all the things, like going to salon, make her like everything. She stopped everything to feel like she's a village girl, you know. Yeah. So in these 2 days, I told her mother she can play PlayStation. She can she can do stuff, normal stuff. And after 2 days, she came back fresh and ready and excited again. And so it was always important for me when we are in the room, in the studio, and it's a long time. Like we go out for fresh air, we make sure that she's feeling good. Yeah. But without getting out of the mood, of course. So it was a balance. It was a balance. You have to be smart and sensitive as a director towards your actors and crew, of course. But it's a matter of balance, not being very sensitive, and forget about the authenticity of the moment and staying in the moment.
Yeah, well, I think you did a fabulous job because, again, this is probably the 3rd time I've seen the film, and each time I just get so sucked into that moment. I wanted to talk
Thank you.
about, like just speaking, like about this type of film, the film, the genre. This is your feature film directorial debut, and it's a fiction film on the Nakba. Most of the films we get at TPFF on the Nakba tend to be documentaries. So why did you want to take, make the directorial debut about the Nakba, and why in fiction format?
Why in fiction format? Because this is what I prefer to make as a director, as film director. And why 1948? Because it's kind of ignored and avoided from many directors. Like many directors speak about Palestine, about what's like the struggles Palestinians face every day, which is important, very important and amazing. But I felt because there's nothing about the source, which is 1948, the source of everything that's happening now. And I understand why, because it's not easy to fund such a project. Mm-hmm. It's not easy to make it and to get support on many levels. So I decided to do this because I felt it's missing from the cinema, the Arab cinema, this side of the narrative about 1948, about the Nakba, about the catastrophe. Mm-hmm. This very important event is kind of ignored. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to make it to make it as archive also. Mm-hmm. But in a fictional format, because we have a lot of documentaries, but not fiction. And fiction usually is more emotional. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to speak emotions and deliver emotions, and to communicate in an emotional way with people.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the funding, and we had a conversation earlier today on our panel. One of the topics was the question of funding. How these projects get made. Can you elaborate a little bit more about, what were the obstacles when you present, when you say, hey, I want to make a fiction film about the Nakba? Was it difficult to get funding for the theme of the film, and sort of, what other barriers when you sort of are trying to make a film or produce a film on this topic?
It was very difficult, actually. I'm not gonna lie to you and say it was easy. It was very difficult. It was people were afraid. Were afraid most of the time to get on board, to be involved in such a project because you will have many enemies. You will have enemies, Mm-hmm. And many people were telling me, were advising me not to make this as my debut feature. Mm. Like many people were telling me, "Are you sure? Like it might ruin your career. It might." Really, I heard a lot of these things, and don't do this. It's a wrong step. It's not only funds, but also. Like individuals, and this was also stressful for me. You're excited to make your project, and you want people to be excited too, and to encourage you. And many people were telling me, "Don't. It's a bad step." But we ended up finding some people who believed in the project and funded it. But I'm not gonna lie to you. It was really difficult. People were most of the time either afraid or not interested. Like it's a headache, Mm-hmm,
mm-hmm. Well, now that the film's traveled all around the world and played at many international film festivals, have you been able to go back to those people and say you were wrong or I told you so? And what has, in all seriousness, what has been the reaction? Or have they been any sort of noteworthy reactions to your films as they've screened to different audiences?
Actually, some of them contacted us.
Okay.
They got in touch. We didn't get in touch with any of the people who are afraid because
No, I was teasing about that. But
yeah, but you know what I mean. Yeah, it would be fun. But no, actually, but we were contacted by some of them. Some we heard that some of them are like maybe not feeling, not regretting, but like liking the film and interested to be part of the next one.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And how have have you noticed any noteworthy or unexpected reactions to the film after, debuting it at different festivals?
The interesting thing that I made the film because I felt the urge to make it, and I wanted to make a humane and emotional film, not a political film. But what I found out that it's kind of an eye opener, and in many countries people would leave. Not Arab countries, people know about the Nakba, but in many other countries, in Europe, for example, people would leave writing Nakba and Googling Al Nakba event, Al Nakba, not the catastrophe. So
right.
it's something, yeah. So I find out it's kind of awareness. It's creating awareness, and it's an eye opener about the truth of this, because people like the new generation know that there is this Palestinian-Israeli war. This is what they call it or think,
right?
But they don't know the source of this, like what happened in 1948 and why what's happening today is happening. So this is the most not exciting, the most thing that I didn't expect.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. If we get people Googling Nakba, that's a great thing. So just, you had mentioned at the beginning when we started our conversation, you talked about claustrophobia. And, in this film, you really use claustrophobia, that feeling of closed in, as, artistic tool into telling the story. Can you talk a little bit about, the theme of claustrophobia, and how did you film that? How do you capture claustrophobia on a set when there's a million other people behind the scenes, and how did you create that closed-in feeling, and why was having that closed-in feeling so important to this story?
As you saw, Daniel, most of the film happens in a room, 52 minutes of an hour and a half. And that was one of the things that really attracted me. When I thought about it, I thought about making, at some point I was thinking to make the whole film inside the room, actually. But I then changed my mind because I wanted to show part of, the first part, which shows the life that was there, because there was a life. They said it was land without people, for people without a land, and I wanted to show that there was a land and there was a life and people living happy and sad moments, and they have culture and heritage and all of this. So I wanted to show this part, but also I wanted to show that the losses that Farha will face, and what she will lose, her child, her friend, her father, her dream, but also maybe the simplest things, her bed, sleeping on her bed, and the simple things, the swings and the small little things that life, So when I chose to make this part inside of the country, many people of the crew, and one of them is Sallam. She's between the audience now. She's the script supervisor.
There she is. Stand up, Sallam.
So many people from the crew were didn't believe me. They were like, "Are you sure? All of this will happen inside, so the camera will never leave the room. Are you sure?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm sure." And this was very challenging for me as a director, as a writer, as a director, and of course for editing. And it was a challenge that I really enjoyed. And she knows, Salam knows, I kept rewriting on set and like editing in my head, and she was like, "What are you doing now?" Like, and sometimes I forget to tell her that I just deleted a scene or wrote a new scene. So it's like, they keep posted, please. So it was a fun experience, but it was really. To me, I wanted people to feel what Farha is feeling, to live her experience and to see from her eyes, to witness everything from her perspective. So I wanted them to be to feel claustrophobic and trapped inside this room. We're using, of course, most of the times tight frames and close-ups, but also by not leaving the room. The angles, of course, we used, the lenses and all of this. Yeah, I mean, it was really important to me, for people, even in sound, with sound, to feel what she's feeling. Like I didn't use music until the very end of the film, because I focused on sound design and sound design was what she's feeling, the internal feelings of Farha. And it was also important as important as the camera work, to make people feel what Farha is feeling.
Yeah, I mean, the sound design was incredible in this film, and it really captured so many of the different moments and emotions, and it was really very well done.
Thank you.
I'm going to see if there's any audience questions. If I can see some hands over there. Do you want to yell out a question? Oh, there's so many hands. Okay, so I see the hands over there.
Can I yell?
Yeah, yell and I'll repeat.
Okay, I have two questions. Why did you call it Farha? And the second question is, in which village it was, the scene, or the true story, in which village?
So why did you call the film Farha, or your main character Farha, and what village was the film, what village was the film made in?
Very good question. Farha means joy.
So what village is the true story? Yeah, the true story set in. The origins of the story.
Okay, so the name Farha means joy, and I chose it because it's like how I always felt Palestine was when my grandparents used to talk about Palestine before 1948. And I felt it's like the joy that was stolen from the Palestinians. And when it came to my mind, it's like stayed like that. She's Farha. And about the village, the reference was Lefta. It's a village in Lifta. Lifta is the reference, but it was shot in Jordan in Ajloun. And it was ruined. We fixed the village. And of course, we used also visual effects. But it wasn't like that. We worked on the village a lot.
Okay. So I saw there was a hand over there at the end.
And there's another hand there.
There's so many. Oh, sorry.
Hi, it's okay. I have two questions. You mentioned awareness, you mentioned emotions, you mentioned the truth. What is the truth that you were trying to deliver when you were projecting in the same scene that there was a Palestinian traitor, and in the same scene the soldier is that merciful that he did not kill the baby? So speaking about Nakba, our grandparents and parents, my father himself was 3 meters away from a sniper. Next to that, he was kicked by one of the soldiers. And we know many catastrophic events that happen. So you're delivering a worldwide message with this movie. Please be clear. Thank you. No, it's my right. I'm Palestinian. It's my right. Thank you.
Okay, you need to calm down first. Okay, so my intention is very clear in this film. So when I meet people pitching the film and talking about a film about 1948 before making the film, everyone like who is not Arab, like talking to me about the film, kept telling me, but there was you sold your land. Why are you upset? I heard this a lot. I'm Palestinian just like you. I'm originally Palestinian, so you have to know this. And I heard this a lot. Like you saw that there was this كيس الخيش المتعاونين, and I was really when they told me this, I always had a moment of silence, and I was thinking of the right answer. And when I decided to make the film, and because we need to be very careful how to deal with this, we have to be very smart how to show a story from Palestine, 1948. I wanted to be very, what's the word? المصداقية, to be very
Honorful?
Honest.
be honest and transparent. Yeah, so I wanted to show everything and show that even this, the guy with this, like the bag, or كيس الخيش, that we call it كيس الخيش, even this guy that you're talking about didn't want to do this. He was looking for, he promised to bring weapons, not women and children, and he said it. And I think it was very clear that he said it. And then about the young soldier, I have reasons for this. First of all, they're like the Haganah, عصابات الهجنة, the Haganah groups are not even an army. They were very random. They chose people randomly, and they told them that they are not human beings. They're just like animals. Have more, like they're more important at that time. They told them that they're not even animals. They're nothing. This is how they were taught. And they brought people randomly, like kids and young and old, like randomly, together and created the Haganah.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. We can hear you.
It was disconnected. So this is one of the kid that you saw that couldn't kill the baby. He didn't kill it for himself, not for the baby, and he left it to die slowly, which is an uglier way of dying. This is number one. Number two, the commander wasn't next to him when he couldn't kill the baby. If the commander was there, he would have killed the baby, right? Number three, I'm sure that in the next house right after, he must have killed another baby, because maybe the commander was there and he was readier. Number four, I have reasons for بناء درامي, if you speak Arabic, like the dramatic structure, because if the baby is dead, okay, she wouldn't be struggling. You as an audience wouldn't be suffocated by the sound of the baby crying all that time. Okay, and to me, the death of the baby was the death of Farha's childhood, and this is why I made it a very specific moment, and I gave them this moment together. So it wasn't about like showing the soldier as a human being, not killing. No, it's not about that. And it's very clear because he left the baby to die.
Right.
Yeah.
And he was going to use the bullet initially. Yeah.
Next question.
Okay, so I saw some hands over there.
Thank you so much. Sorry, loud? Yeah, okay. I just wanted to say thank you for everyone who put the time into making this film. You stated at the beginning that your mother had told you the story, and I was wondering if there was any conversation between you two in terms of maybe getting blessings from her to tell the story, or what her reaction was when you decided to tell the story.
When I decided to make the film, I tried to find the real character a lot. She used to live in Al Yarmouk camp in Syria, but we couldn't, especially after the war in Syria, so we couldn't find her. And the only thing that we really took from her story was that she was locked up in a room. So it's not that we talked about something very private, you know. And I'm sure it happened to many other girls. So when I couldn't find the girl, I decided that this is a good thing. She's of course an old woman now, but I decided that this is a good thing because I needed some distance and to have the space to create some fiction. But when I was, I think in Denmark, in Europe, I'm not sure where, a guy stood up and said, this is the story of my grandmother. And I was shocked. I was like,
Oh, wow.
is it really? But later on, I found out that it's not his grandmother. It's very similar. Something very similar happened to her, with her, and she survived. But yeah, I mean, it's not her. It's something similar. So I found out that many girls faced this. Many girls were locked up to protect the honor because many rape incidents used to happen on the way. The Haganah soldiers were like raping girls. Some of the also parents used to put black stuff on the face to make the face of the girl dirty. And some made them wear clothes of a boy. And this is one of the shots in the film that maybe not many people noticed. But when they're leaving, the separation scene between Farha and Farida, when the father takes Farha, we see a woman leaving with someone, and this is Suad, the bride, wearing clothes of a boy with some dirt on her face. I wanted to hint on this. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, perfect. Hi, Darin. Thanks for the movie. That was amazing. It's the movie is after same. I have the same name as your main character, so very emotional and touching. Yes. My question for you is, what's the most challenging part of making this movie? I mean, you talked about the funding, except for the funding in terms of the delivery. What was the most, touching part for you?
Okay, so to me, it was because like most of the film happens in this room. I was worried about the audience being bored at some point, and I wanted them to feel bored, maybe a little bit in some places, because they, like, if Farha is bored, and she must have felt bored at some point, I wanted them to feel that, but not the whole period, So that was something that I kept editing in my head and changing all the time and improvising. And sometimes you have doubt, which is important to have doubt. Doubt is part of the process, and it's really important to make for you as an artist to make a better film or any kind of art. But maybe also there was this specific scene, which also Salam can remember very well, the family when they come. So we have the original location, the pantry, where we have the house, and what happens. I call it the crime scene, or whatever. You can call it the climax scene. And we had a studio. So we shot only Farha entering the room and leaving the room in the relocation, and what's happening outside, the family, from Farha's point of view, from the door, and everything else and her point of view was in the studio. Her reactions to what's happening is in the studio. So I edited the scene and I showed the scene to Karam, and we were working on this like moment by moment, reaction by reaction. And that was challenging to me because I wanted different like reactions, and I needed to make this look as authentic as possible. And each moment is different. I mean, it's like matching this wasn't easy. It was very challenging to me. But also in the editing this part was not easy at all. I mean, what's happening outside had 10 actors from different acting experiences. Like some came from theater and some from cinema and some never acted before, and we have children. And some from comedy. So it was different acting backgrounds. 10 actors for a long scene, 15 minutes maybe. That was shot over 4 days because of the sun. We used to have short days because of the winter. So to come back and to pick up from emotionally where we stopped wasn't easy at all. That was challenging to go back to the same moment, to pick up and continue. Yeah, and also, of course, with children, not to make it heavy on them. That was a challenge.
Oh, I see a question up front. Oh, there's one up there too. Okay, sorry. Okay, just yell out the question.
I actually want to thank you. I want to thank you for this movie. You said you wanted to make it emotional, and you did. I was crying for half the movie. In the West, when we... Thank you. I'll just repeat my thank you because I think you deserve a lot of thank yous for this. Thank you for making this movie. In the West, when we learn about the Nakba in schools, we only learn about the politics behind it. We're lucky if it even lasts a paragraph. And I think your movie should be taught in all history classes. And I think it's really great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is something I wish happens, because this is why I made the film, for it to be, as I said, archived and for the next generations, because I always say that they dependent on, like, when they created the state of Israel, they dependent on the saying that the old will die and the young will forget. And I always said, when I used to pitch the film, that I hope with a film like Farha, even when the old die, that the young will remember with such a film.
I'm going to ask you the last question, if you don't mind. And I'm just wondering, I know you're very busy still with this film. You know, it's still circulating around the world. You're in Lebanon, I think, at a festival there. I'm just wondering, are you working on new projects? Is there some, can you tell us what might be next for you and your wonderful producers?
Yes, actually, there are two projects that we're working on. One of them is a film, and I'm writing now in like early stages of writing, early development stage. It takes time, and as you said, I'm busy with Farha, so this is taking me from writing a little bit, but I'm planning to have some to focus on the new project. It's something I prefer not to share a lot, because sometimes I start something and we go somewhere else. So when something is ready, I'm gonna share some synopsis.
Okay,
hopefully.
amazing. Well, we are anxiously waiting for the next creation, and we look forward to seeing you again in Toronto sometime. And thank you very much for allowing us to close our festival with your beautiful film.
Thank you very much, Diana. Thank you to the audience. Thank you for coming. It was lovely speaking to you.
Okay. Please say hello to the others, and I can't wait to see what comes next.
Of course.
Thank you.
And they say hi too.
Yes. Well, that's a wrap.